Hello everyone, welcome to the 10-Minute C Discussion Podcast, where I, Nora, your host, will break some exciting news from Southeast Asia, a small but fast-growing region in the Asian continent. Now, let's stream into our third episode, when Trump's tariffs strike ASEAN. ASEAN steps into 2025 strong and fresh, with more goals soon to be fulfilled and many more incoming promising cooperation. While the region is still in its satisfying sentiment, witnessing stable expansion of manufacturing industry and impressive GDP growth, it has to hit a break, being stunned by the US President Donald Trump's declaration on April 2nd, the date he called Liberation Date. Joyful as its names may sound, it marks the shock that struck most world citizens, including the American. The president announced that through the proposed reciprocal tariff policy, America would impose a minimum of 10% tariff on all imports to the States, and even higher tariffs on some others coming from 60 nations and territories. Topping his chart, sadly and unfortunately, mainly involved the Southeast Asian countries, whose GDP and economic growth heavily rely on exports to the US. 8 out of 11 ASEAN nations face higher tariffs, with a rate spanning from 30% to almost 50%, and this framework was once planned to set off by April 9th. Vietnam, Cambodia, Myanmar, and Laos all face a respective tariff spike of 46%, 49%, 44%, and 48%. Meanwhile, slightly lower rates of 36%, 32%, and 24% are for Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Brunei, respectively, though Singapore and the Philippines share nearly the same percentage of 10 and 17%. No matter what country it is, these taxes to be admittedly lay a bumpy road for the entries to the US. What's stinging here is that most objectives and plans regarding export push in 2025 have been largely put to a temporary halt, leaving more space for regional authorities to innovate a timely alternative, tackling such an overnight announcement by President Trump. Of course, any postponement in industrial operation poses a wide and deep anxiety on enterprises as well as their workforce. The United States of America has been a promising destination for ASEAN exports, with a large pool of consumers, vast demands on region's local products, and expanding market. Since the US first engagement as ASEAN's dialogue partner in 1977, the establishment of cross-continent trade in the two areas has been dynamically backed by a strong prosperity in the US-ASEAN relationship. Thereby, ASEAN is now positioned as the third largest food and agricultural exporter to the US, stressing a great milestone that both parties achieved after a long decade cooperation. However, Trump's imposition of the reciprocal tariffs can dampen its thriving momentum. While the proposed rate only indicates the maximum value of the tariff and the specific number charged can be varied for different imports, this scheme still largely raises the cost of logistics and customs for any goods arriving in the US, eventually not only making ASEAN's produce become more expensive to be consumed in the US, the tariff policy also narrows the profits for ASEAN business due to higher market entrance fees. Worse, it scales down the rich market share that ASEAN's goods have been accounting for. Losing its attractiveness to American buyers may later equalize an unfortunate market exit for the export sectors of ASEAN. This case may progress into some tragedy, dragging the region's GDP by at least 20% due to current heavy reliance on exports to the US. If no swift adaptation takes place, the crisis of surplus goods followed by inflation and unemployment is right at its edge. Fully grasp the drawbacks brought by such downturn, regional governments have been intensifying online and even on-site negotiations with American representative agencies in each ASEAN member state. Among the earliest responses, the in-person phone call between Vietnam's General Secretary of the Communist Party, Tô Lâm, and the US President Donald Trump showcases local determination to proactively control this headwind. Some choose to move further. Thailand, has recently embarked on its negotiation path. Led by Finance Minister, the Thai delegation will arrive in the US and have an in-person meeting with the Trump administration on April 21st. Meanwhile, Indonesia plans to go specific by proposing an increase of $10 billion energy imports in its upcoming in-person tariff discussion with the states. It seems that, for the time being, most ASEAN state members still prefer to work out the situation on their own due to discrepancies of internal policy and party lines. Short-term efforts are finally paid off, with President Trump agreeing on delaying the tariff enactment until July, approximately 90 days from its initial plan on April 9. The question now is, what are other pathways ASEAN needs to consider to make the most of this 90-day period, and what are other factors needed to accompany the current diplomatic negotiation, paving a longer and stable journey for the local export playing field? Counting down to the new deadline, the current widely applied negotiation strategy may only illustrate how vulnerable and over-reliant on the US each ASEAN nation is. Furthermore, as this period is all about different proposals coming to America from different corners of the world, the chance of being compared to other more lucrative deals is not exceptional for any nation. Since the prospect of having Trump feeling unentertained is relatively possible, nothing can guarantee that each ASEAN country can reach more preferred tariffs. ASEAN is required to be more explosive and make unprecedented moves. The bloc needs to come as one, whose voices are comparably more impactful. It will be unlikely that Trump ignores further discussion forums with ASEAN regarding the tariff matters, knowing that the region stands at the fourth world's largest economy and also a key trade partner with the US. It is advisable that a dedicated negotiation force representing ASEAN to convince the US should be formed. Team's experts can pull together the region's collective economic weight, presenting a unified voice that is harder to ignore. It could coordinate strategic concessions, manage trade-offs among member states, and ensure that no single country bears the burden alone. Moving forwards, by combining diplomatic efforts, economic data, and shared interests, this task force could elevate ASEAN's position from individual negotiators to a serious regional partner in US trade policy. No one could predict that a normal day like April 2nd could turn out to be a day to remember. The day that is called Liberation Day also marks the event that the US president turns the whole world upside down through his shocking reciprocal tariff policy, imposing a way higher entrance fee to the US across the world's exported goods. ASEAN, a humble region in the middle of the Indo-Pacific, was unexpectedly shaken, being the countries facing the highest tariffs imposed. Those intensive endeavors of further negotiations with the Trump administration have been in place. Whether ASEAN manages to be among the first to reach the finish line in the competitive race of negotiation with America is still a big question mark. However, miracles can happen if ASEAN authorities agree to hold hands and walk together through this time. The voices from one big bloc, forming the fourth largest world economy, are obviously more powerful. And this should not only be a strategy to regain trade power, but also an approach for ASEAN to consider while aiming for more dynamic growth in this current uncertain world. So that's the end of today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it and found the news interesting. For your convenient reference to further details of the news I mentioned, please find the links to my blog page in the description, where I have compiled all the related information. If you have any questions, or you want to discuss more on what I shared today, please leave your comments below. I would love to talk to each of you more as well. You can search for more episodes of this 10-minute C discussion podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, and my own blog page. Thank you for listening to today's episode all the way to the end. And I hope to see you again in my next episode of 10-minute C discussion, which will be released soon. Once again, this is Nora, your host. Thank you so much and goodbye.